Physical hypnosis of the mind for fitness. Physical hypnosis of the mind for fitness. There was a book, or there is a book with that title, I believe, and I've never read it. The title most likely came across my awareness, across my metaphysical desk at some point in time because I have a degree in clinical hypnosis, a master hypnotist from the Hypnosis Motivation Institute in Tarzana, California. You can find more information about them at hypnosis.edu. I have no affiliation with the school besides the fact that I'm an alumni. Alumnus? Is that the singular? Physical Hypnosis of the Mind was the name of a book that came across my metaphysical desk, as I was saying. And just thinking about that title brings to mind many things. I was just a guest on Mojo's talk a few minutes ago, and I really would like to stay. He has a great topic that he's speaking on, which is a question, and the question that his talk is about goes something like this. What can you do now that your future self will thank you for? I'm pretty sure that's as accurate as I can recall it. What can you do now that your future self will thank you for? That's what Mojo's talk is going on currently. And I answered to him that I would simply, for myself, reframe that question a little bit. And so I reframed the question that that Mojo had and has on his talk right now. He's currently there with guests. But like I said, I had to get this idea off. I've got other things I need to do. And I simply reframed his question from what can you do now that your future self will thank you for? And I said, well, I would ask myself, I would say, what am I doing now that my future self will thank me for? And the conclusion that I came to was that, I'm doing a lot of very simple things that are self-care that allow me to be so full of health and happiness and radiance that it's overflowing, that I'm also a benefit and a blessing to others around me. It hasn't always been the case. I've had a lot of ups and downs, even very recently, relatively recently. But it's a fascinating thing to see how much more I stabilize and become more focused and clear as time goes along from some simple things. And as I go along here with this topic of physical hypnosis of the mind for fitness, which, as I said, this title of this book came across my metaphysical desk some time ago because I was a student at the Hypnosis Motivation Institute, and there were all kinds of suggested reading topics. And it reminded me of a lot of things. But the simple things that I told Mojo I do, I sleep enough. I don't use alarms to wake up. I took some reminder advice from Dr. Rao, who is also a longtime user here, a Noom Vibe, where I wake up in the morning. First thing I do is I take at least 10 long, deep breaths. And then from Coach Chelsea D, who is also here, she's a certified wellness coach. She reminded me of the SMART goals, which are specific. The SMART goals, it's an acronym, by the way, SMART. That's what that is. And it stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. So I go through that, and I've created that. And then go to the gym, eat a healthy meal, stay hydrated, good water, and do my stretching and shower. And then I sit and read, and then do some writing, play some music, and then earn some money. It's the last thing I do at the end of the day. So and so that's I just wanted to share that. This is 2 days in a row that I've been on here, and Mojo has had some really great topics. So I just want to give him some props for that, for stimulating my mind a little bit more. And the reason I came across his talk was because I was thinking about this idea here, physical hypnosis of the mind for fitness. So what does that mean? Well, it actually has a lot to do with what I just said. And to really illustrate that, I'd like to present it in a fantastical way that also will shed light on some other things. I do believe that when I share this on my podcast on Spreaker, I'm going to change the title to Demystifying Witchcraft Once and for All. Now, you might be thinking, what does that have to do with physical hypnosis of the mind for fitness? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let me tell you. So, in my understanding, because I don't have a deep-seated belief in the same way that many people do have about certain paranormal, supernatural subjects and metaphysical subjects, such as witchcraft. I understand it from a different perspective. And the perspective is the same as this physical hypnosis of the mind. So how do you physically hypnotize your mind? Because you would normally think, oh, hypnosis is, at least the way I practiced it when I was a student and a graduate and doing my clinical residency at the Hypnosis Motivation Institute, is we're speaking to our client, to the subject that we're hypnotizing, and using metaphors and suggestive terminology in order to relax their critical filter, to help their subconscious mind to accept new information, which are suggestions. Simply, another way you could say that is their options. We're introducing new options for behavior. The Hypnosis Motivation Institute is the doing business as name for their parent company, which is called Behavioral Science Centers. And so hypnosis is a behavioral science. Behavior, right? You be what you be is what you have. Behave, right? And so the the things that I spoke to Mojo minutes earlier about are some of the ways that you can physically hypnotize your mind for fitness. And because of some of the laws, as they call them, of hypnosis. And it's interesting because, this term laws is used a lot, but these are words that were used along with a lot of scientists back in the day, right? Like Newton's laws of gravity, Kepler's laws. Right? People used to say laws all the time. Now they instead use the word hypothesis. But you have this term law being used, passed on from before, like people talk about the law of attraction, right? Or these laws of hypnosis that I'm talking about, or as I said in physics, Newton's laws. But these laws of hypnosis are simple. They are repetition and association. Now, maybe by now that I've said that the laws of hypnosis and self-hypnosis are repetition and association, you might be understanding a little bit better how you can physically hypnotize your mind for fitness. And it's by simply, I say simply, not easily, but simply repeating certain behaviors over and over again. And that's very magical in some ways. By simply doing something over and over again, you become conditioned to it. You become accustomed to it. one thing that a lot of people can relate to, I use this here because it's very important to a lot of people who are either struggling with it or attempting to figure it out, is money. I use money as a reference, a point to grab people's attention a lot, but it's also very important to think about it this way. So one of the things that I've become conditioned to, accustomed to, even if I may say addicted to, is watching my savings account grow to the point where I'm obsessive now because of practicing, of doing that, of taking the actions of, of transferring the money that I earn every day into my savings account. And I like seeing the number get bigger to the point where if I don't do it, I start getting anxious. And not a bad anxious, just a concern. Like, why is that number not increased? Right? This is for my benefit. This is for my future investments and my 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 savings for a rainy day, or however that goes, right? And so there's another clue of how that works by simply doing something over and over again. One of the main ways that this happens to me, that I spoke of earlier in those things that I do, I got uh, accustomed to, conditioned to, addicted to that practice of taking those at least 10 long deep breaths as when I wake up in the morning, first thing before I start doing anything else. And then going over those SMART goals. And I do this. There are various different motivations for this, but some of them is I actually just don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't want to say that I'm doing something that I'm not. And these things are so simple, they're basic and fundamental, that why not? Taking 10 long deep breaths does not take a long time at all first thing when I get up in the morning. Neither does reviewing my SMART goals, those specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound goals. And the fact that by simply using that acronym at first and committing it to memory and using it, now it's become an even shorter mantra. Now I have a better understanding of it because I've been able to put that in my own words that adhere to those letters of the acronym: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound, but aren't said in those words. Sometimes I do say them again just to recall it and make sure that I'm on track with it. But again, there's another example of something that I'm doing. And taking 10 long deep breaths is a physical activity. And the fact that I've been doing it more and more, it's conditioned me to doing it. I've become accustomed to it. And so now it's something that I feel like if I don't, I'm cheating myself. It's so important to me. It's become one of my rituals. Now, I know I did promise before, or tempt you, or dangle before you earlier about this idea of that I said I'm going to probably call this when I reposted to my podcast on Spreaker, Demystifying Witchcraft Once and for All. Now, again, you might be asking, well, what does that have to do with this? That's weird. Why would you bring that up? What's witchcraft have to do with anything? Witchcraft is scary. You might be a religious person and think that witchcraft is scary. Well, I'm here to demystify it and say that it's not scary at all, and that, in fact, from my perspective, look, you could just say I'm just making this up. I'm just making this up, right? But the example that I'm using is beneficial for you to understand something. This will become very clear. So here we go. Let's take an example of the classic witches, right? That people know from like Halloween, right? You have, and which are like the witches from the Wicked Witch of the West from the Wizard of Oz, right? They dress in all black. They have a pointy hat with a buckle on it that looks like one of those Puritan type of buckles or a Quaker, right? And it's usually like a brass or a gold colored buckle that's on a band around the top of the pointy hat, right? And then usually these witches are in a coven, you know, and in this coven they're chanting and dancing around a cauldron, right, which is a big giant black pot full of some kind of liquid, and they're making some chants like bubble, bubble, toil and trouble, and stuff like that. And then what they do is they add these ingredients, right? They say, you know, wing of a bat and tongue of a frog and eye of a newt or something like that. But all those things are clues right there to why this is very similar to physical hypnosis of the mind for fitness, or it's related. Here's how. It's interesting to note that in witchcraft, you would think at first glance, right? At first glance, you would think that it's similar to hypnosis in that you think that hypnosis is simply something metaphysical. It's of the mind. They're words. There's nothing physical going on there unless you are really very specific about the science of how sound waves travel across the molecules in the air made of nitrogen and oxygen, or through solid objects like wood or water that then transfer to your tympanic membrane in your ear and then turn into electrical signals in your brain that interprets them, right? That's physical. So we have the physical connection there, right? But you would think that you could just think things in your head without saying anything to anybody, right? But there's the one similarity to witchcraft is that when you look at first glance at witchcraft, what are they attempting to do? It seems it seems that they're attempting to have some type of effect be created in the physical world by some what you might think at first are magical means, because they're doing these spells, right? They're dancing around a cauldron filled with some liquid, and they're putting in these parts of, frogs and newts and bats and stuff like that. But what we tend to miss when we're looking at that is that they are attempting to have, let's just bring it back to money, right? That I was talking about before. Let's just say these witches want wealth, right? And this is very often the case. A lot of things. It's usually for personal gain of some kind, for wealth, for love, or something in the world, for protection, right? Some physical protection. So the witchcraft is very often being done so that this magic can have some physical result in the world. But what are they actually doing? If you have been considering this carefully, you might have noticed that they're actually doing physical things. And this is a clue to the physical hypnosis of the mind for fitness. You see, there's no real magic there unless you consider, as I do, action to be magic. See, these tales and lore of witchcraft may have been, in my mind, has gotten lost long ago. What the real idea here, what I'm demystifying, what I'm saying, in fact, is that it's the things that you do that are magic. That's the real magic. Think about this. These so-called witches from back in the day are dancing, a physical activity, around a cauldron, a physical thing, with some liquid, another physical thing, putting parts of animals and insects in it, more physical stuff, chanting, more physical sound waves and things like that, in order to get a physical result. Money, wealth, power, fame, protection, sex, all these things, right? They're doing something physical to get something physical. Where's the magic there? I am saying that the things that you do, just as in, again, referring back to Mojo's talk from earlier, I don't know if he's still on. Like I said, I wanted to leave because this was scratching in my head. But he very clearly asked the question, what can you do now that your future self will thank you for? And I didn't mention this earlier, but before I told him about the things that I do, I said that it reminded me of a saying that I heard that goes something like this. If you want to know what you were thinking 6 months ago, look at your life now. And if you look at your thoughts right now, you'll know what your life will be 6 months from now. Another way this could be stated, according to what Mojo was talking about, is what you're doing now will be a good predictor of what your future will be like. And what your present is like can tell you what your actions were in the past. And so the physical hypnosis of the mind, not to extend this to the fitness, and back to the example of the things that I shared also with Mojo that I do, I'm simply doing these physical activities, breathing exercises and meditation, exercising, stretching and eating healthy, and making a commitment to just do it over and over again. They're simple, fundamental, basic things, but I do them over and over again. You see, I start with very simple and basic things because they're easier to do than more complicated rituals. But what happens is by repeating these simple things over and over again, it appears on the outside that I'm doing some complicated ritual because I'm doing breathing exercises and I'm setting goals and I'm practicing martial arts and I'm eating this healthy nutrition and I'm drinking water and I'm sleeping well and I'm playing music and I'm studying science and I'm writing books, and but they're all individual things that I'm doing. I just happen to do them one right after the other or some of them at the same time, but every day. And it seems like there's this whole complicated thing, and people, I had lunch with my friend Dylan today, and she was saying something about how people want to, they get around her and they want to live a day in the life of Dylan. She is a laboratory scientist and she does, she's a biology major. That was her degree in biology, and she does tests for the water treatment facilities here in Virginia. And people, look at the stuff she does and they're like, oh, it's so exciting, your life, da da da. And it reminded me also how sometimes people say those things to me because they're they're shocked. Oh wow, you worked on a music video with so and so, and you did this commercial, and you were in Miami, California. And to us, to her, it's just that's just what she does. To me, it's just what I'm doing. Some people are, wow, you meditate and you set goals and you practice martial arts and you eat healthy, but they're all simple things that we all have the ability to do if we make that choice. And the fascinating thing about all of that is simply by doing these simple, basic, fundamental things over and over again, like the laws of hypnosis, repetition is one of them. Eventually, that changes your behavior. It becomes habit. It hypnotizes your mind. You start recalling these things. You start becoming accustomed, conditioned, addicted in a positive way to these behaviors. And if you practice fitness and health oriented behaviors over and over again, the results are almost inevitable for your benefit. And that's the physical hypnosis of the mind for fitness. And you should give yourself some time. In the Hypnosis Motivation Institute, we had this hypoglycemic diet that would usually help people correct the issues they were having due to hypoglycemia within about 8 weeks, which is interesting too because Dr. Andrew Weil also had a book that came out after John Kappas founded the Hypnosis Motivation Institute in 1967. Dr. Andrew Weil wrote a book called 8 Weeks to Optimal Health. Fascinating book, and I also watched the video series that he made when I checked it out of the Encino Tarzana Library in California. And so that is how the magic happens. The witches of old were doing physical things to get physical results. And that's the simple magic of it all. There was really no evil, so to speak, or nothing mysterious going on there. They were doing physical stuff. And so when you do physical things, there are inevitably physical results. And those physical results eventually make their way into your mind. When you make your own rituals, you can't help but remember them. Think about when you started a new job or any brand new activity, started a new sport or something like that. At first, you were awkward and a little bit clunky and misstepped over and over again. But after a while, all of a sudden, it's like second nature, as it's said, right? Those those behaviors move down into your subconscious mind. Maybe you've heard, but I'll share them here with you. Those four levels of consciousness. That, for example, when you start a new activity, at first you don't know that you know. You don't know what you don't know. You're in what's called unconscious, or sorry, let's do it this way. You are in conscious incompetence. You're very aware that you have no idea what you're doing, right? And when you first start a job, and maybe I don't even need to bring in all four of the levels there, but you're very conscious that you're not doing very well, right? And the level that would go beneath that would actually be the unconscious incompetence. Some people don't know in some situations that they don't know. But eventually, then you become aware that you don't know. Then you become conscious of your incompetence. But as you continue to practice and grow in whatever your new activity is, eventually you become consciously competent. You're thinking about doing it, right? But you're doing it. You're doing it well. You're doing it better than before when you were conscious of your incompetence. And then eventually, that second nature that we talk about is when you have unconscious competence. And that's the level that we get to. That's what happens in this physical hypnosis of the mind for fitness. And I mentioned all the fitness things that I do, the breathing exercises, the more physical exercises, the nutrition, the hydration, the good rest, all of the basics. And together they seem like this magical, wonderful, complex series of things, but they're really just a network of the basics. And maybe this is just an interesting note that I like to share because it's fascinating to me. But I'm a long-time lucid dreamer. And when I felt that I was not as consistent with my lucid dreams as I would like to be, I searched for some answers. And there were a lot of very complicated rituals and things that people suggested to do, but I found one simple one. And I started using it. And it was simply asking myself a question with a pre-scripted answer. And so I asked myself, even when I'm awake throughout the day, and this is an example of this type of self-hypnosis, I ask myself, am I dreaming? And my pre-scripted answer is always, yes, I am dreaming. And then I do something really simple and safe, like I stand up on my toes and raise my arms in the air, or do it really subtle if I don't want to make people uncomfortable thinking that I'm about to fly off the ground or that I'm loony. And I see if I can fly or float or hover or levitate. And if I don't, then I just say, okay, well, I guess I'm not dreaming. But by saying that over and over again, what happens is that when I am dreaming, I do it so often that I ask myself that question in my dreams. I say, am I dreaming? Yes, I am dreaming. And then I attempt to fly or do something else. And it happens, then I know, boom, I'm right there in that lucid dream state. And it's fascinating. And it relates to this again, because I told myself, I asked myself the question, what good could happen of me taking the suggestion to breathe 10 long, deep breaths in and out first thing I do when I wake up? What benefit, what good could happen of me going over my SMART goals along with those deep breaths after at least I finish those first 10 and I keep breathing and I do those SMART goals? What benefit could happen if I, you know, prior to waking up, of course, I slept well and I'm making sure to sleep well? What could happen? What benefits, what positive things can happen to me exercising every day consistently in the right way? What benefits will happen for me for me fueling my body with healthy, clean nutrition, hydration, so on and so forth. And so I asked myself those questions and I answer them. And the answer is always, well, I'm going to feel better and I'm going to feel good and I'm going to feel great. And by then using that little bit of motivation to get those physical practices going, they eventually become part of who I am. And then I've essentially physically hypnotized my mind. And I'm on this fitness journey simply by following that simple law of self-hypnosis, repetition. And the association one is a little bit, it goes along with that. But simply you can look at it like this. One of the ways to stay motivated, and again, I'm talking here about the other law of association next to repetition, which is association, is that it's a good idea, if you can help it at all, that while you are practicing these physical activities, to do it in an uplifted state of mind, a motivated, inspired state of mind, knowing that what you're doing is good for you. And do it, if you can, cheerfully. You don't have to be cheerful in a way where you're bouncing all over the place like Barney, the purple dinosaur, or anything like that. It doesn't have to be gleeful and bubbly and bouncy, but attach to it, associate with it, if you can, something that is inspiring, motivating, and positive. Maybe something that makes you smile, or those SMART goals, right? Something that you really want to achieve and accomplish, knowing that this will help. That's what where the association part comes in to achieving any types of goals. It makes a big difference. Now, as I finish up here, for those who want a little bit more deep understanding of why this is necessary, I'll go a little deeper into the understanding of self hypnosis and how it works in this way. And we can, and this is why it's important. This is so interesting here, this little bit of information. So I mentioned that it's good to have to complete and conduct these activities that are beneficial to you in an uplifted state, one that's inspired, motivated, even joyful, happy, if I may say. And the reason for this is, now think about this very carefully, what's coming next, because this is important. And it may be the tipping point of helping you to get over on achieving your goals or not. Almost everybody wants some type of improvement. And for one, you have to think about this foundation. And Dr. Rao mentioned this earlier when he was talking to Modra. Basically, I'll summarize what he said. Basically, live your best life right now. Just live in the moment, doing the best things. And almost inevitably, your future will come out well because you're just in the moment, you're doing your best to live your life well now. And that's essentially also what I've been saying with this physical hypnosis of the mind. I'm doing the things now that are good for me. And it's almost inevitable that those will lead to feeling better, feeling great, right? But here comes the emotional part of that, of why it's important to attach positive feelings to certain things. And it's essential because you can be telling yourself, you can be having the self-talk, and the words can be exactly the same, but the emotions that you attach to them can make a huge difference of your success or failure. And it's this. Again, let me go back to the materialistic idea of money. something that is important for many of us to have in our lives to take care of the many necessities that we require. Now, if you start thinking to yourself something like, I want or need, or I'm going to have a certain amount of money, let's say $1,000 by this time, by a certain time. Let's say I will have $1,000 by the end of this week. And I'm not saying this is something you should say, but I'm using it as an example just to keep the numbers easy to remember. I want to have $1,000 in 1 week. Now, many people, not all, but the people usually, when failure comes of not achieving that goal, is because while you're saying those very words, I will have $1,000 by the end of the week. Today's Monday, so I guess it's appropriate to use as an example. It fits in here. There is a sense of failure, that it's not going to happen. Emotionally, you feel that it's a sense of disappointment. It's your emotions, your inner self is automatically assigning a feeling of disappointment, the feeling that you would have should you not achieve that goal. And this is very important because when you attach the feeling of disappointment to that future goal, what happens is, imagine that future goal is a picture. Just imagine a stack of $100 bills, like 10 $100 bills, maybe in a rubber band or something like that. It's $1,000, and let's put it on a Friday in a calendar, right? You see, you know that how this some calendars are squares and there's like a letter F over Friday, right? So let's put that. Imagine putting that right there. But then you see that, and you have this feeling attached to it of disappointment and failure. And Dr. Rao, I see you right there. Just give me a moment. And what happens is, working backwards from there is all of your actions moving forward from when you've made that goal to that future point are going to be to satisfy that feeling of disappointment of not achieving it. Now, this should have unlocked that understanding for you so far here. It doesn't matter that you said, I will have this $1,000 by the end of the week. What matters is the feeling that you attach. If you attach that feeling of disappointment, which is a feeling that comes with not achieving it, all of the actions from where you are now to that point that you want to have that $1,000 by the end of the week on Friday will be so that you fulfill that feeling, so that you're not lying. It will line up with that. Now, again, then you should easily see why I said earlier that it's beneficial that you attach a positive, inspired, accomplished, successful feeling to those same exact words. Now imagine that you say the same thing. I will have $1,000 by the end of the week, and you see that square with that stack of $100 bills under that F, which means Friday, the end of the week, and then you have that same feeling that you've had you when you woke up on Christmas and the presents were there, or the girl or guy or whoever said that they love you, or you won a race or accomplished a goal or graduated from school or whatever it was, right? And this is also a clue of where you can borrow those feelings of success from. You simply just transfer it to there, right? And now your actions from now moving forward to that goal will more likely be ones that help you to achieve it, because you're fulfilling those feelings. It's like the self-fulfilling prophecy saying, right? Now, the other thing that's very important about all of this is that sometimes, no matter how we feel about it, we may not get to that point that we want. But we also have to have the emotional maturity to brush it off, get up, and try again. Welcome, Dr. Rao.
Hi, Hakim. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I haven't seen you lately. So.
Yeah, I've been taking care of other things offline. I've been listening here and there, but I've just had so much that's I've been working on
Okay,
joyfully and thankfully.
good, good. Yeah, I don't know about the hypnosis, but I know transcending the mind by being attentive to our inner real self. You know, then thought is really not chattering, kind of takes its place and steps aside, and you are focused on your inner self, and that is even sleeping on that being is very powerful. And you want to focus on something, you want to do something, it's right there, laser focus. Okay, so I mean, modern sciences are just coming to it. What is consciousness and all that? But ancients talked about that being the fundamental. Body and mind are the manifestation of that. So when you are in your real self, um, by understanding how the mind works and going beyond it, that's called dissolution of mind. Manolaya or manonasha are the Sanskrit words for that. And instead of the controlling the projecting thought, you have thought that is silent completely. And then you can focus on whatever goal you want with laser focus, really. There are a lot of aspects of that, but I just want to mention that to you again.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your perspective and sharing that, Dr. Rao.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Dr. Rao has, we've known each other on the many iterations of this app for a few years now, and we have a few things in common, specifically yoga and breathing meditation for one. And just through his gentle nudging is one of the reasons why I've made it a habit. It's interesting how something could be right in front of you, but you don't necessarily think to do it unless someone reminds you. And Dr. Rao had mentioned on one of his talks that the first thing he does waking up in the morning is taking at least 10 long deep breaths. And so I took that suggestion and started doing it. And just like I had heard about SMART goals before, but when Coach Chelsea D was talking about it, I came on here and talked to her and committed to doing it. And that now has, I mean, it's been some time now that this has been going on. I remember at least I spoke to her the first time when I was reminded of it. I was in California, so that was back in March. And now here we are in July, and I've still been doing it every single day, both the breathing exercises and the SMART goals and the mantras that have come from them. So that's and I've just also just given to you the essence of and demystified hypnosis as well as witchcraft, if that's something you wanted to look into. Not necessarily you want to be a witch or anything, but it's really not. The magic is in action, and the action needs to be right now, every day. It's in the present. And Dr. Rao will tell you a lot about that, about being present right now. That's where it is. And, you know, I love mathematics, and I've often looked at the accomplishments in our life, like the very basic arithmetic we know uh, as integers. You know, you have zero in the middle, and then if you look at the number line to the right, you have one, and to the left of that zero, you have negative one. And if every day you strive to accumulate as many positive ones as you can, of course, sometimes there will be zeros or negative ones. However, if out of a score of 100, you have, well, let's just go by old school school scoring system, right? Like you needed like a 65 to pass, a 64 was a failure. But right, if you want to look at it that way, right? If you get 65 at least positive as your final score at the end of the day, then you're winning. You always want to have that balance. I mean, technically, it could be something like 51-49, right? If you own a company, you might know that you're the majority shareholder if you own 51, while everybody else owns 49% of the shares. And, you know, it also brings to mind, and this is, see, look, this is repetition and association. I'm a very, uh, my mind is very freely associating a lot of things because as I'm talking about this integers, it reminds me of a program from the Hypnosis Motivation Institute called the mental bank process or the mental bank concept. And I've actually adopted this outside of the outside of the book that they prescribed for you, that you can buy this book that you can practice this mental bank. And I'll share that with you. But it's something very interesting. Again, going back to the idea of how a lot of people take score in their lives to money because it's become such an important thing for us to have the basics and necessities that we require in life. And this mental bank process that was developed by John G. Kappas, the founder of the Hypnosis Motivation Institute, talked about basically you make a list. Oh, and you know, that's what was coming onto my mind. This is the other association for that. The Noom Vibe app actually has a feature that reminded me so much of this mental bank process. You know, if you go into the Noom Vibe app, you open it up, and I'm going to look at my other device now so I can just have this very clearly. Because when I first saw this, I actually even think I said this to either Dio Akinunati or somebody else. Maybe it was also Daryl with the dashes. But when I looked at it, it reminded me so much, right? So with the how you can get the vibes, right? So they have a list here where you can get vibes. And I'm outdoors right now, so I'm going to give myself to spend 30 minutes outdoors, and you can get vibes for that, right? Drink 6 cups of water, did that, right? So you get vibes for that. Basically, this is how the mental bank process works. They even have things on there. It's just like this app has brushing your teeth, you know, all these different things you can put on your list. And this is mental bank currency. And you go and the book, it gives you what's called a mental bank ledger. And you go in there and you have already determined ahead of time before you start what the mental bank dollar value will be for all these different things that you're going. Like I'm looking here, yoga, which I did today. It gives you 10 vibes. So this gives you 10 vibes going for a walk. Also gives you 10 vibes eating a healthy meal. Gives you 10 vibes, and you could arbitrarily assign them all the same thing. Read for pleasure, right? Um, you could arbitrarily assign, it says 10 vibes, you could say $10, you could say $100, right? But the point is that you put all these things in your mental bank ledger just like you would with a real bank ledger. And then at the end of the day, you tally that up. Let's say at the end of the day, you have 1,000 mental bank dollars, right? And the next day when you start, you carry that over as your beginning balance for that day. And then you go ahead and you give yourself credit for your me time, for your focused work, right? For your meditation, all the things that are like here on the Noom Vibe app, right? Because man, I remember looking at this and thinking, wow, this is genius. And why do I think it's genius? Well, maybe because I'm familiar with the concept. It's rewarding yourself for doing the basics. It's another way of physical hypnosis of the mind for fitness, things that you do. And when you know that you have this motivation, this reward of some kind for getting it, whether your motivation be to get a $25 gift card or to give to the various charities that they have here. That's that mental bank process. And that's the same thing like those integers I was talking with it. But this Noom Vibe app gives a perfect example of how that works. I'm really blown away. I have to say this because I was telling my trainer, I hired a trainer. She's really amazing. Her name's Katie Wickoff. If anybody's in Virginia, at the One Life Fitness here in Virginia Beach on General Booth Boulevard, she's excellent, an excellent coach. But she signed up for the app, and I was telling her about how I'm just so amazed at the 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 process and the progress that this app has gone through its various iterations when it first started a few years ago as the Wisdom app, founded by Dayo Akinrinade, and then how these few years later merged with Noom, another reputable company. It's been around for more than 10 years. And they've kept some of the old features and added new ones. And it's just become, I was just telling my coach, my trainer, I said, more people really need to know about this. I said, this thing has really become a powerhouse in this motivation. Again, what's really interesting to note, I don't know if you've got this, and again, I don't have any affiliation with this school. I don't get any money for them. I don't get any referral bonuses or anything like that. But I just had a really positive experience with the organization, and so I am mentioning them again, like as I've done many times before. But in the name of the school, it's called the Hypnosis Motivation Institute. Again, you can check them out at hypnosis.edu. They have amazing distance learning courses. The word motivation is in there, and that's what this is all about. A lot of times when you can keep score of something and give yourself these little rewards, this motivation is a key in keeping things going. And the word motive, right? Motor means movement, right? Which is related to the physical movement. That's where it comes from. This physical hypnosis of the mind. That's the essence of it. And so I'm closing out here, but I've given lots of different examples, and I've realized again that a lot of this is already tied up here in this wonderful little piece of code and technology that we have as the Noom Vibe app, that we can actually continue to motivate ourselves by giving ourselves these little rewards known as vibes to do the essentials, the basics, the fundamentals that will have us feeling better and good and then even great. A lot of this all is the essence of the physical hypnosis of the mind. And I would like to just say hello to everyone as I close out here, for bouncing through or sitting and listening a spell, to Andrea Marie, to Jesus Aceves Loza, to Lindsay Emmerich, Megan Houston, longtime pal here on Noom, Daryl with the dashes, Yashana, Powerhouse Doobie, hello Doobie, Gavin, Andrea Unruh, L. Groth, Ronald Snyder, Patrice Sanders, Janelle, Dr. Lovespell, hey, what's up? Davina, JAJ, Tova, hey, Tova, how's it going? Greg's Take is also a long time. I've been here. Hilda Fallacaro, or is it Fallacaro? There's two L's in Spanish. It's Fallacaro. If I'm wrong about that, you can let me know. Susan Isaacs and Bailey. Ricky Martin. I did a music video with Ricky Martin back in the day, with also with Christina Aguilera in my work as a set dresser, prop master, and all that. Teresa Chase, Kenneth Manning, Dr. Rao, thank you for coming up and saying hello and sharing your wisdom. Mojo passed through here, and as I mentioned him at the opening of this talk about his wonderful question that he asked, what can you do now that your future self will thank you for? Robin Goodwin, Chelsea Wood, Joseph Syndicate, Alyssa Leggett, or Leggett, is it Leggett or Leggett, and Lisa Childress. I thank you all for stopping by and listening. And Leah Maynard, hey, I'm closing out. Hello to everyone. And you can listen back to this, of course, in my talks to physical hypnosis of the mind for fitness here on the Noom Vibe app.